The year is 2022. The place is a restaurant in Chicago, a place with white tablecloths and wine lists bound in leather. A food critic sits at a small table. His name is Julian. He has written about food for 30 years. He is not easily impressed. A cheese board arrives. The server, a young woman with serious eyes, presents it. She points to a wedge of deep, golden cheddar. "This," she says, "is the Hemlock Gold. It comes from a single farm in Wisconsin. We only get 2 wheels a month." Julian picks up the small fork. He cuts a piece. The texture is dense, almost fudgy. He puts it in his mouth. And for the first time in a decade, Julian closes his eyes. There is grass in this cheese. There is clover. There is the taste of a specific place, a specific herd, a specific set of hands. He opens his eyes. He asks the server a strange question. "Can I see the wheel?" The server hesitates. Then she nods. She returns with a large cloth-bound wheel of cheese. On the side, pressed into the rind, are 2 words: Hemlock Dairy. Julian stares at the name. Hemlock. He pulls out his phone. He searches the name. He finds a few articles from food blogs, praising the cheese, calling it a masterpiece of American farmstead cheese. Then he digs deeper. He adds the year 1988 to his search. An old article appears, from a local Wisconsin newspaper. The headline reads, "Northwood Cooperative streamlines routes, dozens of small farms cut." He scans the list of farms. The names are a roll call of history: Peterson, Olson, Koenig, and there, halfway down the list, Hemlock Dairy. Julian puts the phone down. He looks at the cheese. Then he looks at the article. At the name on a list of farms deemed too small, too inefficient, not worth the stop. This is a story about the gap between those 2 moments. The moment your name is written on a list of what can be discarded, and the moment it's pressed into something magnificent. The stories we tell on this channel are about that gap, about the people who build a bridge across it, with their hands, with their time, with a refusal to be erased. If those are the stories you want to hear, the stories nobody else is telling, then subscribe. Because the story of Sarah Hemlock is the story of America, the one you don't always see, but the one that feeds us all. Let's go back to March of 1988. Sarah Hemlock stood in the yard of her family's farm, the farm her husband Tom had inherited, the farm he was supposed to run for the next 40 years. Tom had been gone for 6 months, a tractor accident on a cold October morning, leaving Sarah with a 10-year-old daughter, Lily, 42 Guernsey cows, and a debt to the bank that felt like a physical weight on her chest. She was 34 years old. She knew cows. She knew the rhythm of the milking parlor, the smell of fresh hay, the sound of the milk pump. She did not know how to make it all work, not alone. The milk truck was her lifeline. Every other day, the big silver tanker from the Northwood Cooperative would rumble down her gravel driveway. The driver would test her milk, hook up the hose, and pump 200 gallons from her bulk tank. That truck was her connection to the rest of the world. It turned her milk into a check, a small check, but it was enough to buy feed, to pay the electricity, to keep the bank from calling. That morning, a different car came down the drive, a clean sedan. Frank Miller got out. Frank was the manager of the co-op, a good man, coached Little League, served on the church council. His family had farmed in the county for 100 years. He was not a villain. He was a man who believed in numbers. He carried a clipboard. He met Sarah by the porch steps. He didn't waste time with small talk. "Sarah," he said, "we need to talk about your pickup." Sarah felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She knew what was coming. She had heard the rumors at the feed store. The co-op was getting bigger, merging with another co-op from the next state over. They were talking about efficiency, about economies of scale. Frank was kind. His voice was gentle. That was the worst part. It wasn't anger she could fight. It was concern. It was pity. "Sarah, the board had a meeting. We're looking at all our routes, the cost of fuel, the driver's time, the lab testing for each stop." He showed her the clipboard, a spreadsheet full of numbers. "Your volume," he said, tapping the paper. "It's just too low. The cost of stopping the truck here, it's more than the milk is worth to us." The words hung in the cold March air. Not worth the stop. It felt like he had said, "You are not worth the stop." He continued, "I argued for you, Sarah. I told them about Tom, about your situation, but the numbers are the numbers. We can't justify it. Not anymore." He looked at her with genuine sympathy. "I'm not going to be the man who just leaves you high and dry. The co-op is prepared to make you an offer. A fair one, for your herd. We'll buy your cows, give you a good price, enough to pay off the bank, help you transition." Transition. The word was so clean, so sterile. It meant the end of everything. The end of the milking at dawn. The end of the cows in the pasture. The end of the Hemlock farm. Sarah looked at Frank, a man she'd known her whole life. A man who thought he was helping her. A man who had looked at her life and decided it could be rounded down to zero. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who genuinely believed they were protecting you from failure. That is the most dangerous limitation, because it cannot be fought with anger. It can only be disproven, with decades of work. Let us know in the comments if you've ever faced that kind of certainty. That kind, gentle, soul-crushing certainty. Because what Sarah did next wasn't a speech. It wasn't a confrontation. It was quieter and much more powerful. She looked at the spreadsheet, at the columns of numbers that erased her. She handed the clipboard back to Frank. "My milk is good, Frank." That's what she said. Just 4 words. Frank nodded sadly. "Of course it is, Sarah. Best Guernsey milk in the county. Highest butterfat content. But volume is what matters now. It's a different world." He thought he was explaining reality to her. He didn't realize she was making a statement of fact, a declaration of her own value. He left, the sedan kicking up dust on the gravel drive, leaving silence behind. Sarah walked into the farmhouse. The house smelled of coffee and old wood. Her daughter, Lily, was at the kitchen table, doing her homework. She looked up, her eyes wide with a child's understanding that something was wrong. Sarah sat down. She felt a tremor in her hands. She told her daughter what happened. "The co-op isn't coming anymore." Lily's face crumpled. "What are we going to do with the milk?" Sarah didn't have an answer. That evening, Tom's father came over. Old Man Hemlock. He was 80 years old. His hands were gnarled from a lifetime of work. He had seen the Depression. He had seen the farm crisis of the 50s. He had seen it all. Sarah told him the story. She expected him to be angry, to curse the co-op, to talk about the old days. He did none of that. He sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at his hands. Then he looked at Sarah. His eyes were clear. "They took Tom," he said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the room. "Now they want to take his cows. They control the road. They control the truck. They control the tank at the factory." He leaned forward. "But they don't control the cow, Sarah. They don't control the grass. They don't control the dirt under your feet. and they don't control your hands." He paused. "The milk is good. The milk was always good enough for us. Maybe it's too good for them." Those words, they were not a plan. They were a foundation, something to build on. The milk is good. The dirt is enough. That night, Sarah didn't sleep. She went to the attic. She opened an old trunk, her grandmother's trunk. Inside, beneath old quilts, was a leather-bound book, a journal, part diary, part recipe book, part farm ledger. The ink was faded. The pages were brittle. She found a section. Cheese making. Her grandmother had made cheese, not for sale, for the family. A way to store the milk's goodness through the long Wisconsin winters. The recipe was simple, written in a looping script. Milk, rennet, salt, thyme. The instructions were sparse. Heat the milk till it is warm as a summer day. Cut the curd when it is firm like custard. Press until the whey runs clear. Sarah read the words over and over. The next morning she milked the cows as always. But instead of piping the milk into the big refrigerated bulk tank, she filled a 10-gallon stainless steel pail, the kind her grandfather had used. She carried it to the house. Her arms ached. The milk was heavy, but it was hers. She poured it into the biggest pot she owned. She lit the stove, and she began. The first batch was a failure, a rubbery, sour mess. The second was no better. She had the science wrong, the temperature, the timing, the acidity. She didn't give up. She went to the library. She checked out every book they had on cheesemaking. She read about cultures, about pH levels, about aging. She learned that her Guernsey milk, with its high butter fat, was perfect for a rich, flavorful cheddar. She learned that the cheese was a living thing. It needed care. It needed patience. She turned a small, unused root cellar into a makeshift cheese cave. She controlled the temperature with a small heater, the humidity with pans of water. It was primitive. It was all she had. She made a third batch, a fourth, a fifth, each one slightly better than the last. She learned the feel of the curd in her hands, the smell of the whey, the rhythm of the process. By the 6th week, she had something. A small, lopsided wheel of cheese. It wasn't pretty, but when she cut into it, the color was a pale gold. She tasted it. It was sharp. It was creamy. It tasted of her farm. She wrapped it in cheesecloth. She drove into town. Not to the co-op, not to the bank. She went to a small restaurant called the Willow Creek Inn. The chef, a man named David, was known for using local ingredients. He was a quiet, intense man who had trained in Chicago. He was trying to build something different. Sarah walked in the back door. She was terrified. She held out the small wheel of cheese. "I made this," she said, "from my own cows." David looked at her, then at the cheese. He unwrapped it. He sniffed it. He cut a small piece with his pocket knife. He put it in his mouth. He chewed slowly. His eyes widened. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "I told you," she said. "I made it." He stared at her. "How much do you have?" "This is it. Make more. Make as much as you can. I'll buy all of it. What do you call it?" Sarah hadn't thought of a name. She thought of the list. The name of her farm on a list of discards. "Hemlock," she said. "Just Hemlock." "No," David said. "We'll call it Hemlock Gold." And he wrote it on the chalkboard menu that very day. Artisan cheese plate, featuring local Hemlock Gold. For the first time, her name wasn't a liability. It was an asset. Let me tell you about the next few years, because this is where the story becomes bigger than one woman, bigger than one farm. 1989. Sarah sold 10 wheels a week to the Willow Creek Inn. Every Friday she delivered them herself. David paid her in cash. She used the money to buy better cheese hoops, a proper press. Cash. 1991. She was selling to 3 restaurants in the region. She bought a used 50-gallon cheese vat from a retiring farmer in the next state over. She paid for it in cash. Her daughter Lily, now a teenager, helped her wash the equipment, helped her turn the wheels in the aging cellar. 1994. A specialty food shop in Madison called. They had heard about her cheese. They wanted to carry it. She started shipping 20 wheels a month to the city. The checks started coming in the mail. They were bigger than the milk checks from the co-op had ever been. She hired her first employee, a neighbor's daughter, to help with the milking. She paid her a good wage, in cash. 1998. 10 years after Frank Miller drove down her gravel road, Sarah entered her cheese in the Wisconsin State Fair. She entered it in the aged cheddar category. She was competing against the giants, the big creameries, the cooperatives, including her old one, Northwood Cooperative. The judge for her category was a respected, retired dairy expert. His name was Frank Miller. He didn't recognize her at first. He tasted the cheeses blind. He moved down the line, tasting, making notes. He got to her cheese. Number 47. He took a bite. He stopped. He took another. He closed his eyes, just like the critic in Chicago would, years later. He wrote on his scorecard. He handed it to the clerk. That afternoon, they announced the winners. The blue ribbon, first place, aged cheddar, Hemlock Dairy. Sarah walked up to the stage. Frank was standing there. He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw it. Recognition. And something else. Something he couldn't quite name. He handed her the blue ribbon. He shook her hand. He leaned in close. "Congratulations, Sarah," he said. "You always did have good milk." It was the first time they had spoken in a decade. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind? It is the loneliest fight there is. There is no satisfaction in their defeat, only a quiet, sad confirmation of your own worth. The world was changing. Small farms were dying. The get big or get out mentality was hollowing out rural America. But on a small farm in Wisconsin, something different was happening. Sarah wasn't getting bigger. She was getting deeper. Her herd was still just 60 cows. She had added a few, but she refused to grow beyond what her land could sustain. Her cows ate grass. The cheese tasted of that grass. If she bought feed from somewhere else, if she crowded her barn, the cheese would change. It would become something less, something generic. She was not in the business of generic. The co-op was. They were chasing volume, lowering their prices to compete with massive operations out west. Their milk was a commodity, pooled from hundreds of farms, stripped of its character. Sarah's milk was an ingredient. It had a name. It had a story. It had a place. By 2005, the orders were pouring in. A distributor in New York, a cheese shop in San Francisco. They wanted hundreds of wheels. They promised her huge contracts. They told her she could be a national brand. They told her to expand, leverage the farm, take out a loan, build a bigger creamery, buy more cows, get big. She said no. She turned them down. Everyone told her she was crazy. Her accountant, her friends, they said she was leaving money on the table. She didn't see it that way. She wasn't building an empire. She was building a legacy. Empires crumble. Legacies endure. Her daughter Lily went to college. She studied agriculture and business. She came home in 2010. She didn't come home to escape the world. She came home to build one. She saw what her mother had created, not just a business, but a model, a way to be small and strong. Lily built a website. They started selling directly to customers. They told their story. The story of the cows, the story of the grass, the story of the co-op. People didn't just buy the cheese. They bought the story. They wanted to be a part of it. A small act of defiance against a world of faceless food. The witness who watches from a distance. It's a strange kind of justice. Frank Miller, now retired, would see the Hemlock Dairy van making deliveries in town. He'd see articles about Sarah in the paper. He heard about the prices she was getting, 5 times what the co-op was paying for milk. He wasn't a bitter man, but he was a certain man, and his certainty had been proven wrong. Decade after decade, wheel after wheel. The dairy industry fell into crisis in the 2000s. Prices plummeted. Farmers were dumping milk, losing their farms. The Northwood Cooperative was struggling. They were losing members. They were losing money. The model of pure efficiency, of volume above all else, it was breaking. One day in the summer of 2018, 30 years after the first conversation, another car came down Sarah's gravel driveway. Not a sedan, a pickup truck. A young man got out. He looked like his father. It was Frank Miller's son, Mark. He was the new manager of the co-op. He had taken over from his dad. He found Sarah in the creamery. She was teaching a young apprentice how to wrap the wheels. Her hands, now 64 years old, moved with a steady, practiced grace. Mark stood there for a moment, watching. The air smelled of earth and aging cheese. It was the smell of wealth. Not money, but real wealth. The kind that comes from the soil. He finally spoke. "Mrs. Hemlock." Sarah turned. She recognized him instantly. Mark. He was nervous. He held his hat in his hands. "I came to talk about the co-op," he said. "We're in trouble. The price of milk. We can't compete. We're trying to find a new way. We want to start an artisan line, branded cheeses, from our members' milk, to get a better price." He looked at her, his eyes pleading. "The problem is, none of us know how. We know how to make milk. We don't know how to make cheese. Not like this." He gestured to the racks of golden wheels. "My dad. He told me to come see you. He said you were the best. He said he made a mistake all those years ago." There it was, the admission. 30 years late, delivered by the son. Sarah wiped her hands on her apron. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She felt a deep, quiet ache. For all the years. For all the other farms on that list that didn't survive. She walked him into the main aging cave. Wheels were stacked from floor to ceiling, thousands of them, each one a testament to 30 years of work, each one stamped with her name, Hemlock Dairy. She picked up a small tasting knife. She cut a sliver of cheese from a wheel that was 5 years old. She handed it to him. He ate it. His expression was one of awe. Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was even, not angry, just clear, like a deep, cold well. "Your father told me my milk wasn't worth the cost of stopping the truck. He showed me the numbers. He was a good man, Mark. He was trying to be kind. But he was wrong. My milk wasn't worth it to him. It wasn't worth it to his system. That doesn't mean it wasn't valuable. It just meant his system couldn't see the value." Mark looked down at the floor. "I know. We want to partner with you. We'll pay you, whatever you want, to be our master cheesemaker, to build this new line for us, to save the co-op." Sarah let the silence sit in the cool, damp air. This was the moment, the chance to be the savior, the chance to go back to the place that cast her out, and be their queen. She looked at the young man, who carried the weight of his father's mistake and the burden of a failing institution. "No," she said. The word was quiet, but it was absolute. Mark's face fell. "But," she continued, "I will help your farmers, not the co-op, the farmers, the families. Any co-op member who wants to learn what I know, I'll teach them. I'll hold a workshop, here, at my farm. I'll show them how to make cheese, how to build something for themselves, so they don't need the truck to stop, so they can decide what their own milk is worth." Mark looked at her, confused. "You'd do that? For free?" She nodded. "For free. Someone did it for me once. An old cheesemaker I called on the phone. He didn't know me, but he shared what he knew. We're all in this together, son, whether the spreadsheets say so or not." That is the legacy. It's not the awards, it's not the money, it's the ripple effect. Sarah held her first workshop that winter. 6 farm families showed up. They were skeptical, beaten down. They saw cheese making as a mystery. Sarah demystified it. She showed them the science, but she also showed them the art, the feel, the intuition. She taught them that their farm had a unique flavor, a terroir, and that the world was hungry for it. Of the 6 farms, 3 went on to start their own creameries. The Kellers with their sheep's milk cheese, the Garcias with their queso fresco, the Paulsons with their cave-aged Gouda. They formed a new cooperative, a cheese trail. Tourists started coming. They didn't just save their farms, they revived their community. They built it back, one wheel of cheese at a time. Sarah Hemlock is in her 70s now. She doesn't work in the creamery much anymore. Lily runs the business. They have 15 employees. They sell cheese in 40 states. They still have just 70 cows. They still know each one by name. Last year, they endowed a scholarship, the Sarah Hemlock Legacy Fund, for young women in rural America who want to start their own agricultural business, to help them buy their first piece of equipment, to pay for their first business license, to bet on themselves. In the living room of the old farmhouse, above the fireplace, sits a dented 10-gallon milk pail. It's the one Sarah used that first morning, the one she carried from the barn to the house, when all she had was a recipe and a belief in the goodness of her milk. Sometimes her great-grandchildren visit. They ask about the pail, and Lily tells them the story of how their great-grandmother was told she wasn't worth the stop, so she built a destination. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is sitting at a table, looking at a spreadsheet, and they are being told they are not viable. They are being told they are too small, too inefficient, too different. They are being told to transition. This story is for them. The most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who believes they are protecting you. The most powerful act of creation is to build something that proves them wrong. Not with anger, but with excellence, with patience, with decades of quiet, relentless work. If this story means something to you, share it. Share it with someone who is building their own bridge, across their own gap. Let them know they are not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because there are more stories to tell, so many more.